Welcome to another edition of the Sim Racing Garage. I'm Barry Rowland. In this episode, we'll be testing the 3-actuator DK2 motion kit from the guys at Sigma Integrale, an upgradable, more affordable way to get into their very good motion systems. I did a review on their 4-actuator DK2 motion kit a few months back. This will be the first time I have tested a 3-actuator setup on a cockpit. Can 3 actuators deliver all the goods a 4-actuator setup can? Time to put it through the SRG's review process and see how it does. So, let's get to it. So let's go over what you get in a 3-actuator kit. Pretty much everything you get in a 4-actuator kit, minus an actuator and the supporting hardware and cables. You'll get 3 of these, which is their 2-inch travel actuator, and I'll go over this a little more detail later on. You get 3 of them. You will get 3 of these mounting brackets, and these are made to mount to profile, but you could actually mount them to something else if you want. We have 4 holes in the back that mount to the actuator itself, and we'll go over that when we attach these to the actuators. And we have some countersunk pieces on the front here, 2 for the top, and this is the top, and then we have some slots in here so it'll fit different widths of profile. Very nice. 13 millimeter thick. Yeah. They have this peen. It's a tumbled, looks like some kind of a maybe ceramic tumbled sheen to it. So you get 3 of those. You get supporting hardware in your bag here, enough screws and T-nuts to support your installation. And we'll see more about these when we're putting it together. We also get their controller box. It's the same controller box that you get with a 4-actuator kit. As you can see, there's 4 ports on the front here, over here. And that will allow you to upgrade later. We'll go over this again in more detail later on. You will get 3 sets of these cables. And these are heavy-duty insulated cables. We have a 8-pin for the data connection, and we have a 4-pin power connection. Very thick shielding on here as far as the casement that's around these cables. Really nicely done. Professionally done, just like everything else in this kit. Certainly a true plug-and-play type of kit. You can see we have these little pieces here that we use to snap into the holes on our actuators and on our controller box over there. So you get 4 sets of these cables, our hardware, and yeah, that's pretty much it. You really don't need anything else, do you? And again, this is all about a kit that you're able to use and get all the functionality, well, pretty much all of the functionality of a 4-actuator system. But you are going to lose some locational cues that you don't get, or rather you do get, with a 4-actuator system once you take that front 2 and merge them into one in the center. And I'll talk more about that in the driving and things like that when we're testing. So yeah, pretty complete kit out of the box, turnkey. It's well packaged, just like the 4-actuator kit. Again, you can go back and check out the review I did on their 4-actuator kit for more details on the boxing and packaging and things like that, because they do a very good job at that. The whole kit is very professionally presented when you get it. What we'll do next is take a closer look at more detail of these actuators. Now we'll take a closer look at the actuator itself. All right, let's go over some of the stats on this. First, this is a rather heavy feeling actuator in hand. It is 9 pounds and 14 ounces, or for the rest of the world, 4.48 kilos, so almost 10 pounds, which gives you a nice heavy duty feel to it. It is about 370, including the controller on top of our motor here. See what I came up with there at the very top here. It's about 375 millimeters, or just under 14 3/4 inches. And of course, we'll add another 2 inches to that because it is a 2-inch actuator. The bottom of the feet are kind of neat the way these things work. They're kind of a captive, but not fully captive kind of solution, and that lets them rotate, right? So they can do this rotation this way, and they can actually slide a little bit left or right this way in the cup itself too. Very quiet the way they build these things. You don't hear any noise when I'm doing this, and I'm doing this right next to the, you hear a little bit. I'm get real close to it, you can hear something. It has rubber feet on the bottom covering the whole piece down here. Yeah, just a nice setup here for handling the off-angle motions and attitudes that we'll get when we're actually using a motion system. The actuator itself, again, 50 millimeters travel or 2 inches. They claim a sustained speed on this of 8.4 inches per second. It is a 5/8 diameter ball screw setup that's inside of here, and we have a 2-inch or 50 millimeter piston right here. We're going to pull this out a little. Not easy. There we go. There we go. The piston is 50 millimeters. And you can see there is a flat spot here, and that is for the anti-rotation function of this actuator. All of them have it. If you want to see a closer look at the inside of how this is built, you can go look at my 4 actuator review I did on this DK2 system, and I actually show you the insides and the parts that are inside in that review. Go ahead and push it back down. The casement itself is aluminum. Again, they have their logo put in here. Some nice little styling pieces on here. Go all the way around. It has a finish that is like a tumbled type of maybe ceramic media or something. Hard to show in the lights, but it's kind of a marbly look to it. Same thing that is on the brackets that we saw earlier in the closer look. So, how does the thing work? Well, here's the motor on top, and they use a certain motor on this. It's called a ClearPath. And ClearPath is a well-known servo motor producer in the industry, and they have these cool little cooling fins on the top here, or cooling pins really, to help cool the servo drive that's in here. That's right, there is a servo drive inside of this cap that's sitting on the motor. Normally we'll have a separate servo drive in a box that's about, this wide and this tall, maybe this thin, to control our motor and tell it what to do so that our actuator will move. Here it's all integrated into one piece, a nice compact solution, which makes it easy when you assemble it and attach everything and cable everything up. You're just attaching 2 cables here. I'll show you those ports over here. And then we have obviously 2 cables that are going to go over here on our controller box. And that's it. Of course, we have to put a power lead on our controller box. But yeah, other than that, in our RJ45 for communication, but we'll talk more about that later. Yeah, we're good to go. So this is a ClearPath. It's made by a company called Technic. And I'll show you the model number that's on this thing. This is an SC series, I think it is. SD series. So this is an SD series. And there's the labeling that you can see what model number it is. And I've been using these for a while, off and on, because I put them on some systems for testing other things. And yeah, this is a quick system for me to bolt on, which is also nice about this whole system. I can quickly mount this onto a rig and cable everything up and get up and running so I can test something on the rig itself. Not so much the motion system, because I've tested this a lot already. So a nice compact, well put together looking actuator here. I really don't have any complaints about this system as long as I've had it here so far at the SRG, because it's been quite a while since I did the first review on the 4 actuator kit. So again, the only difference between this and that is an actuator and some cables. So yeah, no complaints so far about this. Everything works great. The actuator has plenty of power. It has plenty of speed. I can't fault the DK2 system for any of those kind of specs. Now, I can quote you specs off their website all day long, but really at the end, it's all about, the feel that they can give you, and can they keep up with the surface terrain or textures and things like that, the curbings, and, the software obviously controlling it has a lot to do with that, but you still have to have the performance in the actuator for you to get those kind of performance numbers. So, anything else I want to talk about here? Oh, wait. Now, we're using 3 actuators. Now, this does come into play. It is 220 pounds per actuator on their weight limit. So 220 pounds, I think that comes out to about 100 kilograms. So now from having a 4 actuator set up at 880 pounds, now I'm down to 660 pounds total weight, including your cockpit, the driver, any peripherals you put on there. I would say still that's a pretty good weight rating for most folks. It depends, obviously, on your own situation and what kind of rig you're running, those kind of things. But that's a lot of weight, 660 pounds. I don't think you're going to go past that anytime soon unless you really have a lot of heavy stuff bolted to your rig for whatever. You got huge monitors, or you're running your PC on it also, and don't have it sit off to the side, things like that. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good weight rating for a 2-inch travel actuator. So that's the only thing really I had to consider, was I have less weight capability, but considering the cockpit that I've actually put this on, because I happen to have that cockpit here, yeah, you'll see that when we put it on. It's a 15 series cockpit, so I got a 15 by 15 series profile on the base of this thing. It's the ASR1 from Advanced Sim Racing that I did a review on. I just decided to try it, see if it would work, and it did. But you'll see that once we get to the driving segment. Take a closer look at the controller box that comes with this DK2 3-actuator kit. It's the identical box that comes with the 4-actuator kit, which makes sense. So later on, of course, the whole purpose of having 3 actuators in a kit is that later on you can get the other one and plug it in. Curious thing though, when we're plugging this in, the power and data cables, the top one is the 4-pole power and bottom is 6. I believe that's 6, that's 8. Is 8 for data. We don't utilize the first port. We only use 2, 3, and 4. And you'll see more of that once I have it mounted, and I'll show you everything cabled up and the proper orientation for all that. And we have this little car here, and it has some numbers on it. So when you're putting your actuators together, or actually assembling them onto the controller box, you have a pattern there. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4. 2 moves into the center for a 3-actuator system, and 3 and 4 remain in the same position. And then later on, when you add the other one, of course, we'll just have 1 on the left and 2 on the right. We have a RJ45 port here, and that's for communicating with your computer. If you do not have a spare RJ45 port on your motherboard of the computer, you can always add a PCI card, and that will take care of it. They are still working on their USB interface. Not sure what the delivery time on that solution is going to be, but right now it's RJ45. Ventilation holes here. As we go around the case, got some black screws everywhere. It's a nice case, very well done. And of course we have the branding on the back here. DK2, or just DK, and made in the USA. Big fan back here, about a 75 millimeter. I think that's 75 millimeter. We got our mains plug for 110, and this is switching. You can see the labeling there. So this box will work in Europe also. And when you turn this on, we'll have a red indication light there. And when we have the RJ45 connected, we'll have some blinking lights just like a regular LAN port. And then we'll have another indicator, I believe over here, shows it connected. There's the bottom, got some rubber feet on it. That's about it. Not a whole lot to see here as far as the box itself. It's not that heavy. It comes out to be about 370 millimeters, or 14.5 inches long, about 9.25 wide, which would be about 234 millimeters, and we are 75 millimeters high, or 3 inches, give or take a millimeter. Nice solution here. This box has always worked well for me, never had any problems with it getting it connected. And again, you'll see how I have it connected for the 3-actuator kit once we have everything over there and cabled up. Now it's time to attach our mounting brackets to the actuators themselves. And as you saw in a closer look, this is a nice thick aluminum plate. It has that same finish on it that we saw on the actuator legs. And we have 2 slots in here, which gives us kind of a universal type of functionality, if you will, not completely universal. And we want to mount these 2 holes on the top channel of whatever profile we're mounting to, or whatever you're mounting it to in general. And then you have the slots for the bottom bolts. I'll be mounting this to a single 1515 series cockpit. And this is the first time that I've ever mounted a motion system to just a single piece of profile on the base of a cockpit. So I'm anxious to see how that works out. Anyway, we have 4 M8 holes here in the housing, as we saw before in a closer look. And we have these countersunk holes on the back of the plate. And of course, that gives us an opportunity to have these flush, the bolts that we put in there, so that they don't interfere with the profile when we're putting it against that and mounting it through our holes on this side. We get 4 20 millimeter M8 flatheads, and they look like this. Very simple thing we're doing here. You can see I've already got 2 of these attached on the back. The ones at the back there, you can see their brackets on. Just turn it upside down. And this, by the way, this indentation doesn't do anything as far as supporting the bracket. It's just a styling cue that's on the actuator leg itself. And we'll flip the bracket around like this. Of course, we want our countersunk holes up. We want to make sure these two holes are in the upward position. And just line them up and drop in your bolts. So do a little finger tight start here. Then we'll run them down. Good machining here. All the threads are very nice and smooth. I love good machining. And this is a 5mm hex wrench size on the top of these. So we'll just go ahead and run these down with our little speed wrench here. These are nice to have. If you do a lot of bolts and you have a lot of open space above the bolt like here. Not very good if you have a tight space though. You certainly get the job done, and I'll get a final torque on this. I'm just kind of tightening it down now in a little cross pattern. But I'll get a 5mm regular type of hex wrench and tighten this up, or a socket, one of the others. And that's all there is to it. Pretty simple, huh? Once that is attached solidly and torqued down, no worries. Completely support this actuator. Never had any problem with this mount system as far as when I've used this actuator system, this DK2 actuator system on any cockpit that I've ever tried it on. So very good system they have implemented here. So now all we have to do, now we have all three of them set up, is go over to the rig, get them mounted up, and we're going to go ahead and cable it up too and get the controller box mounted up, and then we'll come back and see how all that went. So I have all three actuators attached to this ASR1 cockpit. We have one in the corner here, and while we're here, you can see how that bracket is very universal when it comes to profile. We have the top holes that obviously I have two M8 bolts sitting in there in the 1515 series channel. And we have the other slots there that you would use for any other type of profile. So it'll do 15 series, it'll do 40 series. Not sure if it'll do 20 series. Too small for that. You can't get an M8 bolt in 20, so I don't think that would work. But for the most of the standard stuff that we get, as far as profiles are concerned, profile cockpits, it'll fit. And there's the other side. And again, we have this in a square, at least as much of a square as I could get it in. See the center from the back view. You can actually see two of the bolts that are holding the bracket to the actuator itself. You see have a lot of wires going in there. I did some basic cable management just to keep things out of the way from flopping around, from moving. Go ahead and go in the front here and show you that one. You can see that's connected to the crossbar there. And the controller box, as discussed, port 1 is empty. 2, 3, and 4 are populated with the data and power cables. And of course, my RJ45 communication cable is plugged in and working. And that's plugged in over my computer over here in the spare RJ45 port that I have on that. Really easy to configure this if you have a spare RJ45 port. So everything's up and running. I've already configured it. I've tested it. Looking good. And what we're going to do now would be just get in and take a look at the tuning software that comes with your DK2 system and talk a little bit about that. So now we're looking at the Tuna app from Sigma Simulation. Now over here we have a representation on the left of the cockpit actuator configuration. We have axis 2 in the front and 3 on the right rear, 4 on the left rear. You need to measure the centers between these actuators on the back for the width, and you enter that up here for width. Mine's 22 inches, and the centers from axis 2 to 3 and 4's little plane that they're on, and that is 25 inches. So once you enter this, the algorithm in this tuning software will be able to react accordingly, as it should. Important to get that right, by the way. The settings are over here. We have pitch, roll, heave, environment, road vibrations, and engine vibration, which is grayed out. And it says coming soon. So we don't have engine vibration yet, but it is a feature that they are working on. All right, so pitch for throttle and for braking, which is typical of a motion system to have this, or to use pitch for that effect. We have an intensity slider and a smoothing slider, pretty much self-explanatory. Intensity could also be like for power. That's the way I look at it. The more I pull this over here, the more power I'm sending to the actuators, and things are going to get pretty strong. Now, when you do that, you're adding this power. You're getting the waves that come in are going to be sharper on the peaks as far as telemetry. And they have a smoothing slider here to smooth that out. So all the smoothing slider really is a filter that's filtering the peaks of the signal up, the top signal or the bottom peak, whichever peak it is, and just cutting those off a little bit to smooth them out so that it's not as sharp of a sensation you get when the actuator is moving. So pretty self-explanatory, easy to use, by the way. In general, I already like this GUI. I liked it before, and I still like it because it's very simple as far as some of the GUIs out there that you can use for tuning a motion system. It keeps it simple, which, you know, is always good as long as it's effective. Roll, same thing, intensity smoothing, and of course that's for rolling if we're turning left or right. Heave, a very important one, is for feeling the road textures, the bumps, the curbing, things like that. Again, heave is very important in a motion system because it gives you that feeling that you're actually on a road surface. I really like the heave. And of course, because we have our whole chassis moving, it also adds a lot to what we wouldn't have. It was just if you just had like a seat mover. Environment, that is another layer for pitch and roll. What that means is instead of using this layer, is not using it when we hit the brakes or we accelerate or if we turn on a corner. This is actually a layer that does what pitch and roll is really meant for in motion, and that is for changing the angle of our cockpit or the chassis. If I'm going up a hill, the nose should go up. If I'm going down a hill, the nose should go down, and that's the angle that I'm using when I'm going down or up a hill. Same thing with your roll. That should be when we're on a bank and we're tilted sideways, or like a carousel at the Nürburgring. If we're in the carousel, it should be tilting over. And that's what roll does. And this is the way we adjust that. Now, depending on the track you are, you're going to feel a lot of that, or you're not going to feel any of it. Sebring, you won't feel any of it because it's a flat track. You go over to the ring, you're going to feel it, and we can adjust it here in the ring so we feel it even more if we want to, going up and down hills, or if you're in rally or something and jump and going up a ramp on a jump, it should tilt backwards before you leave the ramp. So it's just another layer to fine tune the angles so that we feel like we're really on a hill or an embankment. Road vibrations are pretty much self-explanatory. Vibrations of road. I always look at this kind of setting as an additional layer to the heave, because heave gives us also some vibrations from the road, but this just adds another layer that we can fine tune that. Typically, I'll be in the heave. I haven't really messed with road vibrations. I played with it, but I haven't really messed with it that much because it does make a difference, but it's more of a fine-tuning thing. So that's what we have to work with. Again, pretty simple, which, again, I do like because you don't have to look through a bunch of different filters to try to figure out what they're doing. Pretty much self-explanatory. The menu drop-downs up here for file, you'll notice it just says exit. There is no save function yet for configurations. Obviously, it's something that's very important that should be on this tuning software. They are working very hard on it, trying to get something that works well. They don't want to roll something out that's glitchy and then tweak it from there. But yeah, it's coming. I've talked to the guys over at Sigma Simulation, and yeah, they said, yeah, that they're working hard on it and it should be soon. Game, we've got a list of games it supports. I remember when I first did my review on the 4-actuator DK2 system, there was only a game or two in there. Now we have a total of 8 listed here. Assetto Corsa, Competizione, iRacing, of course, Dirt Rally 2, R Factor, Project Cars 2 and 3, Automobilista 2, and Race Room Experience. Right, so more games will be added as it goes along. Now I'm going to power on the system. You can see it lights up here. It says raise the simulator, and there is no motion enabled right now. So we're going to power it on and see what it does. It goes through like a leveling. I've already done a couple times, so it might not do much on the leveling, but yeah, it levels itself out before it raises up to the level where we're actually going to be using it in the simulation. So let's see what happens. So it's doing its little leveling piece there. You see it's not doing anything because it's already level because I've already done it a couple of times. So now we're going up into the mode where we're at the middle level of the 2-inch travel, so we have an inch up, inch down that we can travel, and that's obviously where you want it to be when you're actually using it on the track. Pretty simple, and we'll go ahead and power it back off. Watch it settle down. And you can see it settled the front down too. I don't know if you can see that on the video, but the front settled down too and it leveled out. So there we have it. This is how it works. Very simple. I do like that. Probably get on the track and just do a quick little tuning session and maybe try to convey what's going on when I do the sliders different ways. Now we're going to do a little tuning session, something very brief just to go over what the sliders are doing, how much I feel as far as the effects in the sliders. I'm going to turn this, I've been messing around with this a little bit. I'm going to put that back on 1. That was the roll. And just try to describe to you guys what I'm feeling going out on the track. The DK2 system is a great system as far as the motion cues that you get out of it. I did a review, like I said before, on their 4 actuator system, and yeah, it feels really good. The 2-inch of travel that's on here for circuit racing, I think is enough. You don't need any more than that, but when you get to the dirt and jumps and stuff, it's nice to have a little bit more. Even though you don't have to have it, it's nice to have a little bit more. But anyway, this is circuit racing. And what we're going to go through first is the pitch, and I'm hitting the brakes here, and you guys can see how much motion I have, and I'm sitting on 2 on the pitch right now. So I'm going to turn that up to 6 and see if we can tell a difference on that. We'll get out of this S turn here. Yeah, I can already feel it when I let off. You can see when I accelerate. I'm getting some pretty long motion here. Yeah. And I'm definitely getting more on the brakes, which is way too much, but some people might like that. So plenty of motion here available. I think I had it on 3. I'm going to leave it there for now. So now let's talk about the roll. So we'll go back and forth here on the track. You can see the chassis is only on 1 right now, and I don't have any smoothing, I don't believe. Nope, no smoothing. So there's our roll. And that's good. You know, to be honest, that's all the roll I need. I just want to feel a little bit of a weight transfer simulation when I'm turning the car. I don't really want to be rolled over to the side. Maybe if I was in a flight simulator, I would, but not like driving a circuit car. So I'm going to go turn that up just to see what we can do here. I'm going to put that back up to 6. And we're going to go do some more rolling and see what we can do here. Yeah, you can see there's a lot more motion here. And it's a bit abrupt to me. What have I got on? I got no smoothing. I'm going to pop up smoothing to 2 and see what that does. Yeah, you can actually feel some of the, I guess some of the details gone, but there's plenty left. What I mean by the detail is because the smoothing is a filter slider, it just takes some of the harshness out of it. It feels more natural now. Before it was just a little bit harsh with the same amount of movement to the car. Right. Okay, so now let me turn that back down. I kind of, like I said, I like to have the roll only simulating weight transfer in a circuit car. In dirt, then I might turn it up, you know, see how it works. Heave. All right, so heave is on 3 right now, and I'm feeling a lot of road surface. And that's what heave is so great for. And the whole chassis moving under heave, even though we've got an actuator in the center on the front, and we don't have one at each corner on the front, the motion is still there. I can feel the texture of the road, the bumps, the undulations, and of course, and when I come in here and I go over some of the curbing, you can, I don't know how well that's conveyed in the video, but you can feel every bit of that. Good rumbles. DK2's always done a good job on their rumbles. When I went up on that strip there, it was rumbling really good. Yeah. Even though I don't think there's any rumbling there, to be honest. In some of the motion system, and I don't feel it. It's more of a smooth curb. Now here's a good rumble strip here. Yeah. They're very good at the rumble. I've always liked what the DK2 rather, Sigma Integrale, what does with their rumble strips. Yeah. You definitely know when you're up on rumble strips here. Now, that's what heave will do for you. This is a good one here. But also the undulation as far as if there's drops or dips in the track. Some tracks we go really fast, you'll hit it like a drop off, and heave is very good at translating that to you along with the road surface, if you will. And I can really feel transitions on the road surfaces. Let me go ahead and get down here where there are some. Down here on turn 17. So we're going off the asphalt onto the concrete, and immediately I can feel there's a grain difference in the concrete surface here than off the asphalt. All these bumps, very good. There is something, if you've ever been in a 4 actuator motion system, this is a very bumpy straight, as you can see. And I've only got heave on 3 and smoothing on 1, but it feels like I would want it to feel. Yeah, if I put more on here, just for the heck of it, dial it up to 6. Well, yeah, let's see what that does. Okay, this is a bumpy turnaround here too. Yeah, definitely increases it. In fact, I can hear my voice bubbling a little bit when I'm going over that section there. Back on the asphalt, we're smoother now. Back onto the concrete. Felt that transition very well. That's what's so great about this track. There's so many transitions between different road surfaces. It's a good way to test things and see how they behave. Yeah. So heave does a really good job. Again, that's part of, rumble strips comes from heave and all that. So that's why I really like the way they implement that in their tuning. You don't have to worry about having good effects when you're on the curbings and stuff. I'll put that back down to, I had it on 3. Let me go back to 3. All right, smoothing's only 1. I like it there. Anything more, and it feels more of a undulation instead of the, the texture gets minimized. And again, that's totally subjective. One person might think it's terrible and try to put a lot more smoothing in. It depends on how much we turn the power up, I think. How much smoothing we're going to have. It's kind of relative. Environment. All right, this is something that I won't be able to simulate very well. Because environment, if you watched the segment before this, I was going over what some of this stuff does, is another layer sitting on heave, not heave, but on the roll and on the pitch. That is more of a real roll and pitch. In other words, if I'm on a banking somewhere, let me go on this, maybe it'll bank me a little. Yeah, it's banking me there. I don't know if you guys could see that, just being on the curb. It gives you the bank, and then it gives you the nose down, nose up position of the car. If we're going up a hill, it would be nose up. If we're going down a hill, it would be nose down. I'll probably comment about that when I'm doing the driving segment over at the ring, and we should be able to see more of that in that track, obviously, because we're always going up and down. But because this is such a little thing here, it's more like you're just hitting the curbing as far as the angle change here. But you can see the angle change a little bit without me turning when that happens. So we can adjust that layer depending on the track we're on. And I'll probably turn that up a bit. I don't know yet until I get on it on the ring and see if we can see the different transitions there when I'm going up and down the hill. And when you're in like the carousel and you're got a little bit of a bank going on there, see how the chassis moves under that condition. So that's what environment does. And I really, again, this is not a good track to really show what it's capable of doing. But once you get in the dirt and things like that, it really comes into play. Road vibrations, well, that's another layer to heave, because road vibrations, we're feeling that by the chassis going up and down, but very, very, in very, very small movements. So we can feel that grain of the road. I'm going to turn this up to 6. Stay on the track. And yeah, right away, I can feel a little bit of difference in as far as the texture in the road. That's some good rumbles there. All right, so let's go down here. I'm gonna go on the concrete here, and right away, as soon as I go in this concrete, I can feel more intensely a difference as far as the road vibrations is going. It's almost like a fine tuning of the heave, if you will. Yeah, everything's a little more intense. Get down the straight here. This is a very smooth straight. It's probably the smoothest part of Sebring is going down this straight. And then everything turns back to roughness once we get around the corner here. Let's go ahead and get in here. Yeah, it's like almost like another intensity to the heave itself. It just makes it sharper. Then the smoothing would take some of that away too. So it's, again, everything's kind of relative when we're messing with motion, rather, on the sliders for motion. It's all kind of relative because one always affects another, and you have to play with that till you get it right. But the good news is there's plenty. That's a little bit, like I said, this is a little bit, wow, it really got intense there. So yeah, that was road vibration from the bumps. It's almost like once you hit the bumps, it's like that effect of real quick, which doesn't happen when you have it down lower. Again, totally subjective. Depends on what you want your car to do, and depending on the car you're in, the track you're at, what you're going to want it to be tuned to. But there's good adjustments here. They're basic adjustments with the extra layers that we need, I think, where you need them without too much. So it makes it an easy software to use or app to use for your tuning purposes here. And I like that. You know, simple is good. You don't want to, 15 different things you can change here because you tend to get lost after a while. And yeah, it's, like I said, simple is good. I just want to get in and drive and be able to adjust something quick if I need to and just keep going. And of course, that depends on how the system operates on its own, right? I mean, it has to be a well-tuned system to begin with for you to be able to use this amount of tuning selections and still have a great ride on it and without having to fine-tune everything and all these other settings that we can do. You don't need it for the DK2 system is what I'm saying. You get a good selection out of what we have here, and I think anyone would be happy with what you can dial in using this particular software. So they've done a good job with that. Now, at this point, I would actually want to save my configuration, and that's one of the things that we cannot do on this application currently. So it's one of those things that it has to be addressed as soon as possible by Sigma Integrale. It's just one of those things that you got to be able to do. And I've talked to them about it, and they said they were going to get it sorted as soon as possible. So we're hoping that, maybe by the time you see this video or other people are buying their systems in the next few weeks or so, that they will have a save function. We're at Sebring and iRacing in the Ferrari 488 GT3. And Sebring will be the first track I'm going to show you guys because this is where all the different transitions from asphalt to concrete and the rumble strips are good here. And yeah, the DK2 system, and I said it before when I did the review on the 4-actuator system, just does it really well. And it's right up there with the best that I've been in. They just do a good job here as far as executing the programming and the firmware and the tuning that they've done on their system. You really can't complain anything about the motion here. It's got great rumble strips, got great curbing when you hit that. Now, there is a difference, as you might imagine, with 3 actuators versus 4 actuators. You do lose some of the, what I would call, the locational front suspension motion cues. Compared to what we're doing now, it's like taking independent suspension off your front and just putting a solid axle up front, because that's essentially what it is. We're still feeling the hits of the front, right, or left. It's just that you lose some of that locational cue of what's happening in the suspension. So it doesn't feel quite the same. Now, on the other side of the coin, if you've never been in a 4-actuator system, then you wouldn't be missing anything because your body wouldn't know any different. So I guess my point is you're still getting a great motion experience here with the DK2 and the 3-actuator system, just not as detailed on the front end as it is with the 4-actuator system. All right. Now, we're not going to see much as far as the environmental layer where you can turn up the gradient angle on the pitch and roll, which is really what roll and pitch is for. But because we don't have a lot of ability as far as G-forces and things in motion systems, we use roll and pitch for braking, acceleration, and also for cornering. But there's that environmental layer we talked about when I was going over the tuning app, can adjust that so it feels like when we're going up a hill, we're going up a hill. When we're going down a hill, the front end drops down, and we feel like we're going down a hill. The ring is an example that I wanted to use to show that as we're going around here, and that is going down the hill. You'll see the incline. You can see I'm going down the hill now. You can see how the front actuator is obviously a lot lower than the backs, and then as I go back up, it'll level out, and I'm climbing the hill here, and you'll see it extend right there. So this is where we can fine-tune with that environmental layer slider that they have up there. So I actually turned that up from where I had it at Sebring because I knew I really didn't need it at Sebring because it's flat track. But here, I want to feel like when I'm going, you can see as I'm going crashing down the hill here at speed, the attitude that we have here at a different setting on the environmental layer. And that was the whole point of going over here to the ring. The ring's smoother than the previous track, which is Sebring. It's actually much smoother to me. But there are some rough spots, obviously, but still. Here we have another good example. I'm going back up the hill. You can see it leaning back. And you actually feel that in the seat. You feel your body tilting back as it should. So that's important when you're in an environment like this and this track. So yeah, I like that environmental layer so that I don't have to mess with the pitch. I don't have to mess with the roll for my braking acceleration. It's all still the same, but now I can get more incline depending on the grade that I'm at as far as the angle of uphill or downhill. And this is an extreme test here, as I always do at the dirt trucks, the Lucas Oil dirt trucks, and jumping around the dirt here. And also gives extreme angle changes, as you can see going down the hill there. And you can watch the suspension as it does that. The suspension does a good job here. It's fast enough to keep up with what the truck's doing, what you're seeing and what you're feeling. As far as the synchronization of everything, there are some systems where I had to work a little harder to make that happen that I've had in the past. But not this system. It's just got everything. And then it makes it just easier to tune, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is because of the speed and the power on these actuators. It just makes it one of the easier systems to tune, and the app that we use also makes it easier. I'm thinking about things that I would complain about the DK2 system. And really, as far as mechanical performance, the software performance, as far as the algorithms that are running, the programming they've done on this system, everything is done quite well. It comes together in a good synergy, and it's easy to tune. There are two things that I would fault with the DK2 system currently, and that is that we cannot save a configuration in the tuning app, which is a major thing that needs to be fixed. It's very important, obviously, to be able to have different configurations we can click on and load it and off we go. Because we can't save a configuration here for a car or a truck or a track or whatever we want to do, and then recall it quickly, what you have to do is actually a screen capture of what the settings are on the application, which is not optimal, obviously. So they need to work on that and get it done as soon as possible, in my opinion. And the second thing would be that they don't have a USB interface yet for the PC, and we're still on the RJ45 interface, which works fine. It doesn't have any issues as far as performance or getting it to work. It's very easy to set up by their directions that they have. It's just a network card setting. But if you don't have a dual LAN card on your PC, then you would have to buy a PCI LAN card and then install that on your PC's motherboard. And then you would configure a static IP address per the directions. So, yeah, that's the two things I would complain about. But other than that, yeah, this is as close as you're going to get to a plug-and-play system that exists today, I believe. And again, with the caveat of the changes that need to be made for the application functionality. Other than that, the system itself just does a great job. And actually one of the systems that I enjoy getting in and running. It just feels good. And it can get as crazy and radical as you want, or as light and easy as you want. It's just all there. Final thoughts on the DK2 3-actuator motion kit from the guys at Sigma Integrale. This is their entry-level motion kit. It uses 3 of the company's DK2 actuators. These units feature a 2-inch or 50mm travel length. They are rated for 8.4 inches or 213mm of movement per second. Each actuator can handle 220 pounds or 100 kilograms, which I think will handle most cockpit builds I've seen. The motor chosen for the actuator is a ClearPath unit that integrates the servo motor's driver circuitry into the top housing of the motor. The controller box is a clean-looking unit. It is the same controller box that is shipped with their 4-actuator kit. Run the 3-actuator setup for now and add a 4th actuator on the corner of your rig when you are ready. This kit is what I would consider to be, for the most part, a plug-and-play system. Just mount the actuators to your cockpit, Attach the heavy-duty shielded cables to them and connect the other end of the cables to your controller box, and you're pretty much done. You will have to use a spare LAN port on your computer to connect the system to a PC, as the DK2 system has no USB interface for the system. Sigma Integrale assures me that they are working hard to bring a USB interface to their motion systems, as they realize it is one thing that is noticeably missing. The tuning software is a treat to use, as it allows me to dial in a good motion profile without browsing through a lot of different filter settings, which makes it easier than some to get a quick tune done and get on with your driving. Currently, there is no save game function in the tuning software. As you might imagine, it makes things more difficult for the user who wants to save their individual setups for tracks and cars. Here again, Sigma Integrale told me this is a feature that would be added very soon. Where this kit makes up for these issues is in its performance. It has the speed, the power, and a well-written tuning program that does a great job of creating motion cues for the driver. I said this before when I did an earlier review on the DK2 4-actuator kit. You can dial in as much or as little motion to suit your taste. It delivers rumble strips and road texture that is among the best I have tested. This is the first time I've ever tested a 3-actuator configuration. It still delivers as much speed and motion that the 4-actuator kit delivers, but it is felt in a different way. The best analogy I could use would be like having a solid axle in the front of the car instead of individual suspension assemblies. A loss of some of the locational motion cues in the front end of the car. At first I thought I might not like this setup, and my expectation levels were set accordingly, but I was pleasantly surprised, as the motion delivered here was quite convincing. If it were not for my extensive experience with motion systems in general, I could see myself being quite satisfied with this setup. I'm Barry Rowland. Thanks again for watching the Sim Racing Garage channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you would like to help support what I do here at the SRG, visit my website at simracinggarage.com.